Jujutsu Kaisen. I shouldn't have to give this series an introduction. You all know how successful and iconic Jujutsu Kaisen is. It sold a ton of manga, has a very successful anime series with one of the most iconic anime characters in Gojo. You all should know the pedigree of Jujutsu Kaisen by now if you're an avid anime fan. Now, let's get straight to the shit. Is Jujutsu Kaisen mid? Is it fire or is it trash? Well, if you can read past the first grade level, then you should know how I feel about this series. It's mid, it's ultra mid, it's supremely mid. Like, Jujutsu Kaisen is not a bad series, it's just not a good one. Jujutsu Kaisen is a series that prioritizes fast-paced action while doing the bare minimum job in fleshing out their characters. When reading the story, I couldn't help but feel disappointed on how the characters were being treated. Like, the author would give you little information on the character and either kill them off too soon or not expand on their character enough to the point where it felt like they had depth. Most of the characters in Jujutsu Kaisen are remembered more for their badass moments and cool abilities rather than their ideals, backgrounds, or even progression as characters. Like Yuta, for example, his background is very obscure. Like, we know him and Rika met in the hospital, but their relationship isn't really fleshed out well. It was like, boom, they met in the hospital and now they like each other, they played together a lot at the park, and now boom, she's fucking dead. Like, it's really hard to give a fuck about anything pertaining to these two characters when there wasn't any effort put into fleshing out their relationship or them individually. And I wouldn't have considered this to be an issue if their characters and relationship have gotten fleshed out more throughout the series, but it didn't. Jujutsu Kaisen 0 is the only time in the entire series where we get any information on their relationship. We get more information on Yuta, but it's touch and go information that still leaves you desiring more from his character. Rika is basically reduced to a convenient tool shed for Yuta rather than the mechanism that can continuously build her and Yuta's relationship, which I think kind of defeats the whole purpose of them being together now in the story because their bond is what was supposed to make them a strong duo. But the bond aspect is lacking because it doesn't get touched on often, if not at all. It's one of those things where we're told how close they are, but the story doesn't show much of how it even got to that point that would make it feel more impactful. Junpei, who is a side character in the Versus Mahito arc, is more fleshed out than Yuta and Rika combined. We knew Junpei's ideals, we knew it caused him to think the way that he thought, we seen him get his ideals tested when Yuji came around, we know how he met Mahito and how Mahito influenced him. Shit, we even know about his mom and what she means to him, as well as his favorite movie genre. How the fuck is a side character more fleshed out than one of the protagonists in the story? Shit, there was even a point where I thought Junpei was going to be a mainstay in the series because of how well he was getting fleshed out. And this just isn't the case with Yuta. A lot of characters in Jujutsu Kaisen aren't fleshed out well, such as Todo, Toji, Miwa Shoko, Sukuna Kenjaku, Yuki and Hikari, Sumiki Fushiguro, and the list can go on. And then you have the characters that are fleshed out, but they leave a lot to be desired. And those characters are Megami, Nobara, Choso, Gojo, Nanami. You guys get the point. Jujutsu Kaisen doesn't do a good job in fleshing out their characters. They're mainly there to look cool and kick ass. The only characters in the series that I can confidently say are well-written characters are Yuji, Geto, Higuruma, Junpei, Takaba, and I would have said Maki, but after what Gege did to her character after the Zenin clan assassination arc, I don't even see Maki as Maki anymore. Like, her character was literally assassinated so that Gege could bring Toji back. And when I say bring Toji back, I'm referring to Maki being the bootleg version of Toji. Those bullshit power-ups she got post Shibuya arc ruined the whole appeal of her character. For me, of course, because who knows the reason why other people liked her. They might have just thought she was hot and could fight, and that was enough for them to call her a good character. But for me, Maki was the character that was supposed to surpass the expectations of her clan and show them that she could be a grade 1 sorcerer with little to no cursed energy, while also going against the sexist culture that was upheld by the Zenin clan for years. That was the appeal of Maki's character for me, and for Gege to give her those outrageous power-ups post Shibuya just tells me that not even Gege believed that Maki could be a grade 1 sorcerer with her limitations. Now granted, she did technically achieve her goal, but in this case it's not about her achieving her goal, but how she achieved it, which felt really cheap and undeserving. Also, for her to come from getting folded multiple times in Shibuya to getting a bullshit power-up that gave her the immense power to one-shot an entire Zenin clan, on top of her giving Sukuna a run for his money and tossing his ass around like a rag doll. Yeah, it was the biggest piece of dog shit writing that I've ever read at that point when that shit came out. But to close out the character portion of this video, I don't think Jujutsu Kaisen has a terrible cast of characters. They're decent at best. You'll definitely be able to find yourself a handful of characters that you'll fuck with heavy. Like for me, I fuck with Yuji, Sukuna, Toji, Gojo, Higuruma, Megami, Nanami. Like, Jujutsu Kaisen's characters have an aura and swagger to them that makes them very likable. It's just that the construction of most of these characters need to be handled a lot better. Because characters like Kenjaku, who is a horrible fucking character by the way, Sukuna, Mahito, Jogo, Hikari, Kashima, and even Gojo to some degree, these characters made Jujutsu Kaisen feel really shallow a lot of times. And there's something I want to say about Yuji's character, because there's this ongoing notion out there that just because he doesn't get a lot of screen time, that makes him a bad main character, which is some of the dumbest shit I have ever heard, because a main character doesn't need to have a lot of screen time for him or her to be considered a good main character. And Yuji has more screen time than anyone in Jujutsu Kaisen, so how the fuck did this narrative even become popular in the first place? And for the people out there who don't like Yuji because he doesn't get enough power-ups, you niggas are shallow and y'all just want to power scale some shit. Like, Yuji throughout the story has developed really well as a character, has progressed well as a sorcerer, has impacted the story and other characters despite being extremely underpowered, and some of y'all are telling me that just because he doesn't have any crazy hacks abilities, that makes him a boring or terrible main character? Yeah, fuck out of here, bruh. What makes Yuji so engaging as a character is him being underpowered and trying to find ways to be effective in the story. And even though he might have taken a lot of L's, the way he's written to where these horrifying moments haunt him and affect him mentally throughout the story, it adds a lot of realism to his character and makes him feel more human. He's a character written to experience the horrors of the Jujutsu world, to the point where it will make most people think that Jujutsu Kaisen is just torture porn for Yuji. But hey, maybe people don't care about that kind of stuff in the shonen story. They just care about hype, fights, and transformations. But anyway, let's move on from this stupid ass controversy and address some other things in Jujutsu Kaisen. Now, when it comes to the power system in Jujutsu Kaisen, it's easily one of the harder power systems to follow in anime, mainly because Gege does a horrible job at explaining what's going on. There have been multiple times where I had to reread a chapter just to get a grasp of what was going on. And the funny thing is, I learned the power system better when reading the fights than reading all that mumbo jumbo bullshit that Gege was info dumping. Now, the power system itself is actually really interesting. It reminds me of Hunter x Hunter's power system and how creative and wacky the abilities can get. Another issue is how the power system creates too many fights where characters are being completely overpowered because one person's curse technique or curse tool is either too advantageous or broken. It creates very predictable fights, and in my opinion, one-sided fights are just boring to watch in general. I'm cool with the series having a few one-sided fights here and there because you have to show the audience why a character is perceived to be very powerful in the story. But when 70% of the fights in your series are one-sided, it takes away the excitement of the fights and make me want to skip them altogether because I already know who's going to win. The last issue I have with the power system is the use of Black Flash. Black Flash is said to be a luck-based ability that's really hard to do, yet damn near every character is using it and at the most convenient of times, which kind of takes away the rareness of the ability because it happens too much throughout the series. It really doesn't help when Yuji is basically written to have Black Flash as his signature move, as he can use Black Flash up to 8 times in a row. That's like hitting the jackpot at a casino 8 times in a row. That's outrageous, my nigga. I like the concept of Black Flash, I just don't like how it's used in the story. And speaking of the story, let's talk about it for a second. Jujutsu Kaisen is a very basic shonen story that lacks depth. When reading the story, you'll quickly realize realize how shallow most of the themes and characters are. Now, there are some good moments here and there, like Geto's origins or Yuji's philosophies on death being challenged by Sukuna and Mahito, but when we talk about the overall package of Jujutsu Kaisen, the story doesn't provide much substance that will put it up there with an Attack on Titan, Naruto, or even Bleach. The story of Jujutsu Kaisen is too simple. There's more fighting than actual storytelling, and the fights aren't adding much depth to the story to justify it happening so much. I don't mind stories with simple plot lines, but when that simple plot line fails to develop their characters efficiently while having cliche plot lines that boil down to fight your way through the problem, it makes me not want to read or like that series with the simple plot line. Now, there are things I like about Jujutsu Kaisen's story, such as the pacing. I like how the story didn't waste time and got straight to the shit. Even with some of those fillerish fights, Jujutsu Kaisen did a great job at not dragging those out. Another thing I love is how the author uses Sukuna throughout the story. Sukuna trolls and tortures Yuji throughout the story, letting the readers know that this whole demon inside the main character shit is not gonna be a walk in the park. Throughout the story, you really get to see this joyful character and Yuji just get mentally wrecked by this demon to the point where he believes he's the monster causing all the destruction in the story. You can literally see it on Yuji's face just how much Sukuna has put him through, which makes you want to cheer for him even more when he eventually gets his payback. Though, the way it's currently looking in the manga, the execution and how it seems Yuji is going to get his payback, it seems really forced and rushed, and I don't like it. Which is disappointing because I thought the way Gege handled Yuji and Mahito's clashes were really good. They put Yuji in situations where he had to grow as a character, but in this final arc where they have Yuji out of nowhere just learning all these cursed techniques in the span of a month, while also being somewhat related to Sukuna in the story hinting heavily to Yuji getting the crazy power up because of it, it feels like a really cheap way to close the extreme power gap between Yuji and the other characters. And the reveal of Yuji being related to Sukuna doesn't bother me at all since they clearly look alike. I just hope this revelation doesn't give Yuji in the same power up on some 0 to 100 type shit. But nonetheless, how Jujutsu Kaisen handles the demon inside the main character trope is easily one of the best I ever saw in any anime, and that's because the story actually does a great job in showing the consequences of having an evil deity attached to you. Speaking of consequences, another thing I love about Jujutsu Kaisen is that the story isn't afraid to dish out harsh consequences. Whether it's someone dying or getting fatally injured or getting mentally fucked, no character is safe, and I love that shit. It makes the tensified moments mean a whole lot more because you don't know what's going to happen next to the characters. Now, I know there's a controversy out there regarding JJK killing off his characters, and all I have to say to those people who say Gege hates his characters because he kills them, grow the fuck up. Like, I understand people who say it's bad because the characters that are getting killed off are barely fleshed out. That's an actual argument I can somewhat agree with. But you motherfuckers out there that just don't want characters to die because you like them, yeah, y'all are some pussies for real, bruh. Death adds an element to a story that makes it more serious and engaging. It also just makes sense to have characters die in the story. Like, who the fuck wants to read a story where there's little to no death? A One Piece fan? Death is a natural course of life, and depending on how death is handled in the story, it can develop many characters as well as add a layer of depth and maturity. It also makes those tense moments a lot more enjoyable and unpredictable. Having little to no death in an action-packed story can make that story come off very cheesy, corny, goofy, unrealistic, and just overall childish. And don't tell me no bullshit like, oh, it's shonen, it's made for kids. My nigga, most people that read and watch shonen are from the ages of 13 up to 25. Shit, it might be older than that. And trust me, them motherfuckers at Shonen Jump know that people in their 20s and 30s read this shit. If a shonen story can have physical violence, political themes, and sexual fan service, then they can have death. So fuck out of here. Now, when it comes to the stuff I hate about Jujutsu Kaisen's story, it's stuff I've already stated earlier in this video. An underdeveloped cast of characters, an overly complicated power system that's hard to follow, the constant info dumping that, to be honest, didn't really help me understand shit. The story can be really cliche at times. Most of the fights are underwhelming because they're one-sided as fuck. There's also other issues I haven't mentioned yet, like Gojo being the answer for most of the problems in the story due to him being an extremely broken character. Like whenever that dude showed up in the earlier chapters of JJK, all the way up to the Shibuya arc where he got sealed, there was no sense of tension whatsoever. Gojo was booty clapping everyone with no lubrication, except for Toji. They robbed my nigga Toji, but Gojo was such an issue for the story's tension that not only did Gege create a device that would keep him out of the story for a significant amount of time, but his death became extremely predictable when he faced off against Sukuna for the final time. I don't know why niggas on Twitter acted like Gojo had an actual chance to beat Sukuna. At that point of the story, without Yuji catching his fade with Sukuna? Psh, yeah, fuck out of here. But Gojo's presence has been a huge problem for Jujutsu Kaisen's story for the reason I stated before. Another issue I have with Jujutsu Kaisen is the villains. They're fucking terrible. Even when it comes to Mahito and Sukuna, I like them as villains, but I don't necessarily like them as characters. I respect the impact they have on the story, but when it comes to them individually as characters, they're extremely shallow and are barely fleshed out. Their characters are basically boiled down to cookie cutter villains that like to kill and cause chaos because it's fun. Geto is a perfect example of a perfectly built up character. We know his ideals and the things he went through that made him choose the path he ultimately walked on. We really got to see Geto develop as a character, and not only that, but his ideals were understandable. His goal in trying to create a world full of Jujutsu sorcerers was unrealistic and goofy as fuck, but his reasoning for hating non-sorcerers made a lot of sense. My biggest issue with Geto's character, and this is mainly a flaw on Gege's part, is that he died too soon and got replaced by a horrible fucking character, which really pissed me the fuck off. Because how are you gonna flesh out a character and then instantly kill them off and replace him with a brain that does nothing but instigate and take back shots? Kenjaku is such a horrible character. His reasoning for doing all the shit he did in the story is because he thought it would be fun to learn something that he didn't know the repercussions of. Like, what the fuck? So you're telling me this motherfucker caused the Shibuya incident that got hella people killed, he instigated and tricked the US Army to get into the Culling game so they can be sacrificed, he killed Yuki and stole the Tengen, all because he thought merging Tengen with humanity sounded like fun? This is who Gege replaced Geto with, a shallow talking brain that just do shit because fuck it, why not? Not only that, but his death and everything leading up to it was so fucking stupid. He pretty much dicked around until Yuta caught him lacking. So not only is Kenjaku shallow, but he's also childish and fucking stupid. I like Toji, but he's another victim of Gege's shitty writing. He wasn't fleshed out enough and the character arc would have been very beneficial for him because it's desperately needed. Too bad it's never going to happen, especially since Maki is basically his replacement. Jogo, Hanami, and the rest of those other irrelevant ass villains in the Shibuya and Culling game arc, they're honestly not even worth wasting my breath on. That's how fucking trash they are. And as for Kashima, what the fuck was even the point of him being added to the story? He barely did anything. All he did was hop his ass in the battlefield after Gojo's death and got smoked by Sukuna within one fucking chapter. But with that being said, I think that's all I have to say about Jujutsu Kaisen. As for the future of the series, I really don't have any interest in it, to be honest. I like the sudden twist of Sukuna still in Megumi's body. It's been hinted heavily throughout the story, but I didn't think it was actually going to happen. But besides that, the final arc sucks, and the way Gege is utilizing Sukuna right now is giving me Madara Uchiha vibes and how Kishimoto wrote himself into a corner by making Madara too powerful. That's what it feels like right now with Sukuna, which is a sign for a garbage ass conclusion to the story because Yuji and the other characters are just gonna find some bullshit way to beat Sukuna when Sukuna should have probably been won by now. Also, that Gojo versus Sukuna fight was super underwhelming. It was too predictable and too much fucking info dumping from sideline characters. And then Gege has the audacity to repeat the same events with this whole Gojo and Yuta shit where Yuta is taking over Gojo's dead body. Like, yeah, we're just repeating the same events at this point, and it seems like Gege is dragging his conclusion. Also, the way Gege did Megumi's sister, despite building up her character throughout the story, is egregious levels of bad writing. Now, I know there might be some people out there that might want to know my favorite character or my favorite arc in the series, so here's my rankings on the best characters and the best arcs. My favorite arc in the the series is the Shibuya incident arc, as that may be most people's favorite arc. The Shibuya incident arc did a great job in developing Yuji's character while also having amazing tension and jaw-dropping moments, thanks to Sukuna and Mahito. Gojo and Kenjaku's encounter was really dope coming off of the Gojo Pass arc, and Gojo getting sealed is exactly what the story needed to build tension. Also, the death of Nanami and Nobara, I felt like the characters were decently fleshed out enough to where their early exit from the series were justified. Would I have preferred for them to grow more as characters before they died? Yes, of course, but just like in real life, you can't expect the unexpected, and people don't get to do what they plan for the future, and I think that's what made their deaths hit pretty hard for the fans. For people to say that Nobara and Nanami's characters weren't fleshed out before their deaths is just wrong. We knew their characters pretty well before they died, and I think their deaths did more good for the series than it didn't. It kept the fans on constant alert, and it made the world of Jujutsu Kaisen feel more gruesome. As for who's my favorite character in the series, if it wasn't obvious before with my constant praise for this character, it's obviously Yuji. I know some might have thought it was Gojo, but no. While Gojo is a lovable character, he's extremely shallow, and I know I'm gonna get a lot of slack for saying that, but hey, I can only tell you what I read, and based off of what I read, Gojo is a shallow character. Yeah, I get it, he was the strongest and felt isolated because who can relate to weaklings as a godly figure, but bruh, come on now, that shit was just whatever to me. It sounded like some shit out of a Superman comic book. Also, Gojo got outshined by Geto in the Gojo Past arc. Like I said earlier in the video, we got a whole dissection of Geto's character and seeing him develop into the villain we know him to be. Geto added a layer of depth to the series that showed how Jujutsu sorcerers can be victims of society and how humans can sometimes be unaware of how much they contribute to a problem they despise. Meanwhile, with Gojo, it feels like the point of the arc for him was to show how he ascended to a different level of power, him realizing he was the chosen one. And I'm sorry, but that shit is shallow compared to what Geto brought to the table. But anyway, that's all I have to say about Jujutsu Kaisen. If you guys liked the video, please like and subscribe, I very much appreciate it. It's your boy Trigger Senpai, and I'm out, man. Peace.